big welcome back to the Nick Elston Show, the imaginatively titled Nick Elston Show. I was running out of creation by then. Season 6, episode 12. We're actually coming in on the end of the season now, and a truly amazing guest to bring you today. This time it's personal, as they say. As you know, no filter with me. I know this is going to be a big one for both of us. So, ladies and gentlemen, Emily Evans, give it up.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you so much. Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you here. We were just saying just before, like you said, completely take the filter off. We're like both quite nervous doing this. And I guess we're quite nervous because the reason like we're so close and connected and stuff is actually through Emily's dad, who really close friend of mine who passed away some years ago now. But larger than life actually still rings true even today. There's not 1 week that goes by I don't think about him, usually when the football's on, hence the cap today.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I noticed you had the Rovers cap on. Amazing.
But I was kind of thinking, do I record this kind of like this preamble into today's episode? I thought, no, let's just do this because we recently met up at my Find Your Voice live event, and you did this piece around kind of like that Pete, absolutely right, would have been a great granddad, and absolutely right, he would have been. So yeah, let's just do this. But I'd love to bring him into it because he's very much alive and well now, isn't he? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, he's around everywhere.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's been 12 years since he passed away, which I cannot believe. But yeah, he's still
Crazy,
very much part of my life. I've got 2 boys now. And yeah, that's kind of what I touched on when we were together a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, he's still very much here. He's still, very much talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think about him every day and he's very much in our conversation. So yeah, really nice. But, it's also really nice to, connect with you, Nick, and have a conversation about someone who knew him really, really well as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. We may even share a couple of funny stories from our holidays abroad and stuff.
I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Okay. So, but also you're a human in your own right as well. The amazing thing about this and the synchronicity of the universe is an amazing thing sometimes is when we kind of did reconnect and I saw you on LinkedIn and your role doing what you do now, I thought actually there's kind of multifaceted reasons why we should speak. So tell us who you are, where you're from, what you do. That's a really good place to start. Think like you're on The Chase or something.
Yeah, I'll try. I don't watch The Chase, but I think I know what it's about. Yeah, no worries. So yeah, I'm Emily. I'm from Bristol, although I have moved quite a few times. So I actually now live in South Wales. I guess kind of who I am. I'm a mum. That's my kind of biggest job right now. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter. I have been a carer. I touched on that a couple of weeks ago as well. And, we can talk about that a little bit as well. And yeah, I'm a friend. I'm a bit of an adventurer. I love to travel as well. And I'm recently, I've got into gardening as well. So that's something I can call myself now. But that's kind of, who I am. And then I guess, like you said, from a work perspective, really interesting that our kind of, worlds have kind of collided over recent years in terms of that kind of mental health space as well. So my day job is I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for an amazing charity called Everyturn Mental Health. We deliver a wide range of services, predominantly on behalf of the NHS. So quite kind of ranging from quite complex services more through to kind of community-based services. So that's my day job. And then I'm also a trustee and deputy chair of another amazing charity called the Conservation Volunteers. So that's me kind of giving up a bit of my spare time to support another charity, just really great things in terms of developing green spaces, particularly in kind of urban environments. So they work with local community groups, bringing people together to kind of develop and create new green spaces, and with a big kind of focus obviously on the environment and biodiversity and stuff. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
That. Not a fan of a quiet life then, it's fair to say, right?
A fair amount going on, but I quite like it that way.
That's cool. I like that. See, it's kind of the other thing about talking to you is I feel so old because I can remember you as a young un going to football with us and watching Rovers and the terraces. And why haven't you not got the same amount of grey in your hair that I have? And that's just not fair, right?
I know. I was trying to think like how long ago that was. And like it is actually mad now. I think that's like 25 years ago-ish amount of time. Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it? So I guess for everybody else who don't know you, of course, because I could easily go down this rabbit hole just talking to you and nobody having a clue what we're talking about. I guess you mentioned that kind of what you do now and your roles in life now, personally and professionally.
Yeah.
You've also alluded to some of the responsibilities and experiences you've been through as well. I guess take us from that kind of on the terraces through education and family life and so what you do today.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess on the terraces and watching rovers was kind of in my teenage years, but I guess to go back a little bit, before then. So yeah, I was born in Bristol. Initially lived in Warmley in Bristol, and then when I was around about 3 years old, my parents split up. So obviously you knew my dad, Pete, and then so my mum and dad split up when I was about 3. I lived with my mum initially for a few years, and then I guess kind of one of the significant things about my life, and certainly kind of where the start of kind of, I guess, my interest in terms of mental health and working within this space comes from, is when I was 5, my mum attempted to take her own life through suicide. Thankfully was unsuccessful, but came away with quite a lot of physical and kind of mental injuries and stuff off the back of that. So that kind of prompted me to move around a little bit around kind of that time. And actually kind of by that kind of time that was happening, my dad had moved to Surrey within London. So so I lived with him throughout kind of the beginning of my school life, so infant and primary school. Have some really happy memories of living there with my dad. Like you said, he was a very kind of outgoing, big personality guy. So I have lots of really happy memories of living with him and parties and stuff there. So yeah, that was, obviously kind of a big change from kind of where I was moving, but kind of really, really fond memories of that time. My dad then remarried, and it was quite kind of sudden in terms of that. I don't know if you ever met Sue, Nick, but that was his second wife. And we moved quite rapidly to Essex, so to Braintree in Essex. Sue and her family were really nice people, but kind of it was a big change for me, big change of kind of living with just my dad into this kind of new family kind of setup and new dynamics, quite different in terms of kind of the culture, I guess, in terms of what I've been used to. I was very much a tomboy up until that stage and wearing t-shirts and baggy trousers and stuff, and suddenly I was in this kind of completely different place. Expectations of being that much more girly, my hair got permed, and basically kind of just whilst it was I think all for the kind of right intentions in terms of my dad, and this is with kind of no disrespect to him, just found myself in quite an unhappy place within my childhood. So around about when I was must have been about kind of 9 or 10, I'd been visiting my mum in Bristol, so kind of every other weekend, kind of coming back to Bristol and visiting her and spending time with my grandparents, my mum's parents, and kind of just decided that I just wasn't happy living in Essex anymore. So I talked to my dad about it and said, look, I am unhappy and I want to move back to Bristol. So yeah, I mean, that was, I'm sure, a difficult situation for him, but kind of for the right intentions for me in terms of kind of moving back and wanting to kind of be back living with my mum, who was was in a better place by then. Her mental health conditions are long-term and complex, and we can talk a little bit about that as well a bit later on. But so moved back with her, and that was kind of right at the end of primary school. So I'd gone to a couple of different primary schools by that stage, back to actually one that I was in right just before I moved to Surrey, back in Bristol, in Kingswood in Bristol. And then moved into secondary school in Kingswood as well. So that kind of secondary school years, fairly standard. I wasn't unhappy, kind of got through it fine, made some nice friends. And what, sorry?
Which secondary school did you go to?
Kingsfield. I don't think it's called Kingsfield anymore, but it was called
same as me. Yeah.
So I think, and then that's when I met friends who we then kind of must have kind of met through that kind of time. So very, very much kind of met some friends who were into football, and then later in those kind of years my dad moved back to Bristol, and that's when we kind of met in terms of he used to take me to Bristol Rovers, which was just great, wasn't it? Like, again, I got such good memories of that, both the kind of home and away games, getting on the coach and going up to York and Manchester, and all sorts of different places. So
and it's safe to say Pete had a way of slating people from the terraces that was completely different to anybody else, because it wasn't without the expletives. It wasn't really rough and blunt. It was very well spoken, very poshly spoken, using big words. It was amazing to witness. I mean, if genuinely, if that was happening now, he'd be like a TikTok viral megastar.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, he liked to shock, but in a not kind of rude way, didn't he?
Yeah.
Almost by being the opposite.
Yeah. He definitely had I remember kind of the first time he met Claire, my wife, saying that, just remember, you're an incredibly lucky lady. It's the best moment you're ever going to have.
I know.
He still doesn't agree with him, but he just had this way with people, I think. And you've been so open and candid, and thank you about your experiences. And I guess that responsibility, and I use the word burden very respectfully, but those kind of responsibilities and burdens that you experienced, that they were not really typical things that people would experience at the age that you did. How did that impact you as you went on into kind of adult life? I'm assuming it's taken a decision in terms of the direction of where you're going with this stuff, given what you do now. But tell us about that situation with your mum, and how did that actually look? You mentioned it was complex. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so obviously, I guess complex in terms of the different aspects of mental ill health that she's experienced. So obviously, being in from kind of postnatal depression after she had me, then into kind of divorce, and then into obviously what must have been a very kind of low place that led to that suicide attempt. But also then kind of when I was back living with her during my kind of early teenage years, she experienced frequent kind of periods of psychosis. So kind of like, for people who aren't aware of that, it's it can be quite wide ranging, but for her it was very much kind of extreme paranoia, psychosis, and kind of very much believing certain things were happening. But I, in terms of, I guess, how that affected me at that time, I was very much then at the center of her world, in terms of she was a person who, when she was having these thoughts, often it was about thinking my stepdad, she'd remarried by that time, my stepdad was trying to kill her, or other things were going on, and it was kind of me who she trusted and listened to in that really difficult, frightening space for her. But I guess as a 11, 12, 13-year-old, kind of, trying to talk your mum through that was also pretty frightening experience for me as well. So I guess all of that. And then, thankfully the psychosis is not kind of, doesn't happen so much anymore, but there's an ongoing kind of or has been an ongoing kind of responsibility there in terms of some support and kind of caring. And I guess I've done a fair amount of work in terms of kind of the impact on me of kind of childhood experiences, like lots of people have. And amazing to hear. I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts now, and amazing to hear people kind of sharing that. But I certainly did some work on that kind of a little bit through my kind of later teenage years, and then actually did some kind of counselling after my dad died, which was kind of grief counselling, but ended up speaking more about my mum than I did about my dad. And then probably the most useful kind of stuff that I've had is through CBT, so cognitive behavioural therapy, which I had when I was pregnant with my first son, Finn. And that wasn't because I was in a particularly difficult place. It was more of a kind of proactive, I really want to work on this. I want to kind of work through it. I want to figure out kind of how this stuff has affected me, and kind of put myself into the best place I can be ahead of becoming a parent. I had a real kind of thing around history repeating itself, and what how I would kind of parent. So I did a lot of work on that. And one of the key things was actually I guess because of the kind of experiences I'd had, they're kind of growing up, there naturally wasn't such a space to show my emotions. It was very much about kind of what was going on around me. And so I kind of learned that, or dislearned how to show my emotions, or even kind of interpret my emotions and my feelings. So one of the key things I worked on through CBT was actually being able to figure out what I was feeling. And that sounds so simple, but actually kind of,
not though, is it?
Yeah, but actually kind of having therapy, I'd sit down with a therapist and they'd say, how are you feeling today? And what I kind of learned behavior for me was kind of just saying something that I thought I was supposed to say. And actually kind of like doing that work to go, actually, how am I feeling? What am I thinking? Was something that I kind of had to learn or kind of relearn. And that's probably been one of the most kind of fundamental things for me, but just some amazing techniques and tools that I took off the back of that. So one that I still kind of use quite regularly is tea time. I don't know if you've come across it.
What's that?
It's thoughts, emotions, and actions. So it's just kind of checking in with myself regularly to go, what have my thoughts been? Because I'm a great, more I've worked in this space and more I've understood that we can have a thought about something, but that doesn't mean that thought is actually reality. So kind of what are the thoughts that are going on in my head? What stories am I telling myself? What emotions have I been feeling? And then kind of reflecting on that, what are the actions that I need to take in my life right now to help me if those kind of thoughts and emotions have been negative. So yeah, that's I guess one of the kind of main things that kind of, it's come for me off the back of that is just understanding that what is a typical childhood? I don't know, but what the experiences I had kind of led to those kind of challenges for me.
It's a really interesting one, and you touched on something that's really kind of funny in a very dark humor way there about kind of, I remember with counselling, especially earlier in my kind of experience of counselling, you would end up kind of people pleasing, wouldn't you? You say what you think the counsellor would want to hear. So you get given a neutral environment, a safe place, and you still want to people please. And it's such a weird thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's, again, been really interesting working within mental health and, understanding more about the kind of tools and techniques and therapies and stuff. And the grief counselling I actually had after my dad passed away was very much like counselling in terms of, okay, sit down, tell me what's in your head. And oh my God, that felt so uncomfortable just to kind of go, well, what, like no structure at all, just talk. And yeah, exactly that. You kind of just end up talking just what you think is, what you think is the right thing to say. And actually kind of that's where I find CBT a lot more useful, good, much more kind of focused on the future, the tools, the techniques, the things that are going on right now that can help me in terms of, being and staying in a kind of a mentally well place as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. The counselling versus coaching kind of methodology has come up many times across the seasons on the podcast, but it's such an important one because I think it highlights the fact that there's no one fix or there's no one playbook, and it's all, and it sounds really cliche, but it's true. It's all in the journey, isn't it? And even right now, we're constantly learning about stuff and ourselves and how we react and, like I said, how we're feeling. And even this weekend, I was reading on, I think it was Psychology Today, there was an article on real event OCD. When I was reading through that and actually the formal diagnosis notes and stuff, not as a diagnosis by any stretch, but there was so much that resonated that I never ever associated with obsessive compulsive thoughts.
Yeah.
And as you said, a lot of people are really afraid of those thoughts because we think that that's kind of our desire or that's our wish, and things like intrusive thoughts are really, really tough because suddenly then we start to label ourselves as bad people, or it's such a minefield, I guess. And I think that's why I've always been really mindful to be very upfront about the fact I'm not solution focused. And I think ethically and morally that has to be said by anybody that hasn't got the solutions that you have or the qualifications that practitioners have. Because for me, the engagement bit is recognizing that there is no one fix or playbook. Your experience is a great testimony to that. I've got a really diverse audience here. I should have said this before, really. So given the work in the prison system and education and also businesses and stuff, I know that a lot of young people will have learned so much about themselves from listening to your experiences. So thank you for that.
Oh no, you're welcome. You're welcome. And yeah, I completely agree with all of that, by the way. But I think what is amazing about what you do and these type of conversations is it is just opening up the conversation, normalizing it, because it's not about finding solutions to everything, but actually kind of just by sharing your experiences and how you've kind of dealt with different situations. That's that's super powerful as well. But and thank you for mentioning that in terms of young people, because it's it's what what then kind of led after that kind of teenage period was a period where I then didn't do great. Well, I completely flunked my A levels, didn't go to university, but then, bit of luck but a lot of hard work has led to a really successful career, which I'm really proud of now. And I guess, often people do think I did go to university, and I'm, in a lot of ways really proud that I didn't, and that I've managed to be successful despite kind of not doing that and having those experiences. So again, I think it's really great to be able to share and talk about that.
Absolutely. And I said, so Pete, your dad did move back to Bristol, and was I was his housemate for a while as well. That was some fun times, to tell you. I always remember kind of going to, I think I never went abroad. My family growing up always went to UK holidays, like Devon and Cornwall, that kind of stuff. The first time abroad was with your dad, and talk about a recipe. So we went in the space of 3 months. We went to once to Cyprus and once to Spain, and brilliant times. And I might even pop up some images on here now as we're talking, actually, because I think
do it.
Nice. There was two things that really stood out for me, and I'm going to try and tell this as best as I can. We were at this kind of karaoke bar, and that scene from Only Fools and Horses, where Del leans back and forth. It was that. It was basically that. So Pete was talking to the lady who was doing the karaoke stuff, and she was working behind the decks and things. We were getting the drinks in at the bar, and I think he just cracked a killer line, and then he just leaned back and he fell over the step. And I thought, oh no! But he just does it with such grace. This is the thing; it's so much grace. He actually just picked himself up as if nothing had happened. I love that.
Amazing.
The second one that really jumps out when I was kind of like making some notes about this for today. Well, I have to make notes about your dad. So we, back in the days when you couldn't smoke quite openly, so we had this table in a restaurant, and our table was outside on the patio, but there was this kind of glass sliding door that separated the tables from us in the inside. Because it was really hot, they had the doors open, and there was a couple of older ladies on the table next to us who weren't smoking. So Pete had a smoke on and stuff, and we were just kind of talking and chatting. And I think one of them maybe tutted his direction that he was smoking, kind of thing. Your dad's very, very flamboyant, right? So he'll make a big gesture, so he'll just say, "You went like that to close the sliding door," not realizing that their tablecloth was attached to the closed door, and their table. But it looked like he just kicked off completely. So it was amazing. I love, do you know what? It's things like that just make me really glow when thinking about those times. But
definitely. It's really lovely for me to hear about it. And it's funny you said about Claire and what he said to her, because one of my favorite stories is when he met my husband Dan, I don't know, like it must have been at some point over the weekend I decided to take Dan to meet him for the first time. And my dad, the place where he was living at the time in Bristol, they had quite regular like events. They called them something on the close. I can't remember what it was now, but basically kind of it got quite notorious for being quite boozy. And I think he introduced absinthe.
Oh wow! Jeez.
Yeah. Although apparently he never drank it himself. He just introduced other people to it, which is probably another story. But I thought Dan, I was a little bit nervous, thought, let's just go, over. I didn't give my dad much warning, but my his then wife at the time, Paula, opened the door, and just a big gas of smoke came out of the door. I'd warned Dan that he smoked, but it actually wasn't cigarette smoke. He was cooking. So we went into the kitchen, he opened the windows, got rid of the smoke and stuff, sat Dan down. He said, "Right, Emily's new boyfriend, I've got 3 questions for you. Number 1, shithead or gashead?" Thankfully, there was a gashead, and actually one of Dan's family members played with Bristol Rovers, so that was pretty
okay.
Good. Second question, Bristol Rugby or Bath Rugby? Again, Bristol Rugby, got that one right. Third question, what's it going to be? Would you like a sausage sandwich, Dan? That was just again, like classic classic dad to kind of be welcoming, very, very welcoming, but also just a bit of interrogation as well. But I have, and what was really lovely, obviously, there was some kind of difficult stuff through childhood, but what was really lovely then kind of, I guess, through my early 20s is that we did get really close. And like you said, he liked going out and having a good time. And I've got really great memories of us going out to different places on White Ladies Road and Clifton, where I was living at the time, and going out. And often, that I think was must have been my 21st or 22nd birthday. I got quite drunk, ended up getting taken home by my friends, and he carried on like dancing the night away, out and about. So yeah.
That's right. I mean, I just saw him like literally close Brannigan's down back in the day.
Yeah.
we tend to do this kind of route. That I was living in Kingswood at the time, and we would go to the local pub, the Flower Pot, and then work our way down Kingswood High Street, then get the taxi into town.
Nice.
And we would probably do this like twice a week or something. Like I could do it now. It's literally I couldn't keep up. But yeah, so he back in the days when you had checkbooks, like so you can cash a check for pocket cash.
Yeah.
So he went to the barman and give him a check to cash at my local, by the way.
Yeah.
And because he had the stubs on him that he didn't want the wrist getting nicked because it got his bank details on it, he put it in the ashtray, got his lighter out, started setting fire to it. So suddenly it went up faster than you think because of the film on it. We got this like little bonfire going off the pub table. And he said, what are you doing? Kind of thing. But it's those kind of things that stick. And I think that, like I said, he was such a larger than life character. But the problem with a larger than life character is when they're not there, it does leave a larger than life gap. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And
Profile Me is a super shareable mobile application designed to help professionals grow their personal brand. Proudly paperless, this powerful tool packs the power of web, social media, and messaging into one beautifully designed interface that offers a unique and human-centric way to connect and build trust with clients. Easy to share on any platform and easy to save to any phone's home screen. With Profile Me, getting referred has never been easier.
It's nice now kind of time going on and just thinking about the really good memories, and that's definitely the images I have when I think about him. But then it was really difficult, obviously kind of losing him. And it was as you know, pretty quick. He kind of got diagnosed with stomach cancer in the August and passed away in the January. So literally over a couple of months. Really difficult kind of seeing him get very, very poorly, very, very quickly. It was really, really, really difficult times as you know, kind of losing him.
It was. And I think the last time I went to see him when he was at home up in Chippensbury at the road.
Yeah.
Like he said, that he was just saying like, imagine me, but looking a lot better. It's still that kind of vanity coming through kind of thing. I think he was kind of a little bit kind of worried about seeing people, which I kind of understand knowing him, but so glad we got a chance. We had a good kind of hour or two together. R.I.P. Mr. Tuck.
Yeah.
Everyturn Mental Health. So tell us about Everyturn Mental Health and your role there. And I'm guessing the reason why you have a passion for doing this is because of everything you've explained so far.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So so my current role is Chief Commercial Officer of Everyturn Mental Health. So like I said, we run a range of services. So from quite complex services. So we run some dementia care homes or nursing homes for people with dementia, but who've also got quite kind of complex mental health problems and some challenging behaviours. We support people who are taking their first steps away from prison. Again, really interesting that kind of, that crossover there in terms of some of the work you've been doing. So we support people who have literally just kind of stepped away from prison but have got mental health needs. And so we have some kind of housing kind of units that we support. We kind of support people with accommodation, but then mental health support whilst they're living in that accommodation. So housing with care and support. And then our services kind of go right the way through then to more community-based services. So we do talking therapies on behalf of the NHS again. So if you get referred by your doctor, or in most places now you can self-refer into talking therapies. So we're contracted by the NHS to run those. So that's counselling, CBT and other types of therapy, through to kind of much, I guess, less clinical services. so community services which are supporting people within the community. And that could be people who have got lots kind of going on in terms of relationships, with housing, with jobs. I guess a lot of the kind of factors that lead to people experiencing mental ill health are not to do with their condition, but to do with the stuff that's going on in their life. So those kind of social economic factors we support people with. Then we also support people who are in crisis as well, but with a kind of more non-clinical intervention, again just looking at that whole kind of holistic view of what's going on for that person and supporting them through that crisis. And we also do some kind of crisis housing. So a real kind of wide range of services, almost all commissioned by the NHS and local authorities. My role as Chief Commercial Officer is looking at making sure that we're making the right commercial decisions as a charity, as an organisation. So we're not led by profit like a kind of commercial organisation, but we do need to make sure that we make enough money so we can reinvest that back into the services and that we can keep delivering these services for hopefully a really, really long time. So that's kind of part of what I do. My team are made up of head of business development, who looks at kind of new business, new opportunities, service development, which is looking at kind of how we can develop our existing services or develop new services to support communities and individuals. I have a project management office that sits under my team. A head of marketing and communications kind of sits under my remit. And there's 5, and I always get stuck on the last one, but I've got it. Director of relationships, who and that kind of function looks after what is quite a complex mix of relationships within the NHS, and that's been really interesting for me actually within this role, which has been a bit different to my previous role. It's really kind of understanding the NHS landscape, and there's a lot of work that we have to do in terms of working and building relationships, maintaining relationships with NHS commissioners, with kind of NHS trusts, and also a team of community development managers works within our kind of relationships function as well, and that's really getting into the communities to understand what we can learn and how we need to develop our services, because there's a lot of talk around kind of underrepresented groups. How can we make our services more accessible to them? So our community development team really do that, really kind of that listening ear in terms of what's going on within that community. How can we encourage more people to access our services, but also how can we learn from them to develop them and make us kind of more accessible to them? So
wow. Busy
role. Yeah, amazing though. I love it. Like, it's my first day back from holiday today. I had a really nice week off last week, but kind of coming back, it's just really nice feeling like I'm coming back into a really exciting role, lots going on, an amazing team, great culture. I'm really, really fortunate.
It's amazing to know that people, again, organizations like yourselves, kind of, you're not visible to the main general public. So it's great to know there's organizations doing the work that you're doing. Is there, or was there even a worry of becoming that kind of wounded healer, that by having the experiences that you've had, putting yourself into a position of helping others, do you then potentially run the risk of like who looks after the people who looks after people kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I've never worked directly with people. I've never had like a patient-facing role. So I guess from that perspective, I'm one step away. I'm really curious to kind of think about kind of what it would be like to be a therapist, be in that kind of role. And I think I think it's useful for me to be that kind of step away, because I kind of have an appreciation of seeing again, through the experiences with my mum and like most of us other kind of, close friends and people who are around us, really great services and support, but also sort of like the big challenges in terms of NHS support. So I think having that perspective, particularly when we look at kind of new service development, is really, really useful. And I think more than anything, and this isn't just with this role, kind of previous roles in my previous organisation and the work I did there, I if anything, I've just learned more in terms of kind of, things, tools, techniques, concepts of things which have really kind of helped and supported me. And been fortunate just to work with some amazing people and, who are super supportive and want to create environments of, doing really, really good stuff for the right reasons. So
I'm sure the feeling's absolutely mutual. I was talking to you about this today as well. I'm sure they think very highly of you too.
Thank you. Hopefully.
The conservation volunteers, that's an interesting one. So that's that I'm assuming that's a passion of yours as well. Tell us about the conservation volunteers. I don't edit, it's just as well, isn't it? Right?
No, and they're even like trickier. They're shortened to TCV. And when I first started working with them, like getting TCV and that abbreviation on the right way, you wouldn't believe the amount of times to do that. So yeah, it's quite a random one, really. It happened. What is it, like a good year and a half ago now? I was approached through LinkedIn actually by an agency who was recruiting for new trustees for the conservation volunteers. I was actually on maternity leave for the second time with our son Alfie at the time. So it wasn't great timing at all. I was kind of, mum of two very young boys, thinking about kind of, transition back to work. But yeah, they kind of approached me and said, look, they're looking for new trustees. It's a great charity, doing great stuff. And it just really appealed to me in terms of kind of my personal values. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm by any stretch an expert in terms of environmentalism or conservation, but I am really passionate about it. I've done some education around, what's going on obviously within the natural world. And I guess particularly as a mum, I'm really conscious of the world and the future that my young boys are going to be growing up in, and the impact of climate change and, the real challenges in terms of biodiversity and what that's going to have on the future. So, we certainly as a family do our bit in terms of trying to be, taking all these kind of small steps that we can to becoming more responsible and self-sustaining. We have a vegetable patch here, which is lovely, and that kind of stuff. But yeah, this was an opportunity where I thought, you know what, the timing isn't great. I've got a big question mark over my capacity to take on anything more, but it's a great opportunity to give back, and it's also a great opportunity. I mean, career-wise, it's a great opportunity for me to kind of learn and see the dynamics of another organisation. We have a really diverse board with great kind of backgrounds and experience, and so yeah, it's it's a bit of my time a month in terms of board meetings and reading papers, that kind of thing. Okay. And then we recruited for a new chair back end of last year. And yeah, that's been great, kind of seeing, overseeing kind of that, and a new chair coming in. And then we also needed a new deputy chair, and he was kind of talking to the trustees and said, would you be interested? And again, wasn't sure if the timing was right, wasn't sure if we could give up any more time, but just thought, it's another opportunity for me to work more closely and support and offer my expertise to it. Yeah, as a charity, they're very much kind of work in different areas of the UK. In some areas they do more than others, but they look at kind of green spaces. So it might be just, your local park, which the council haven't got much funding to do any more work to, and they're get pots of money and bring volunteers together and develop, it might be a vegetable garden, it might be community groups that kind of, do planting within the area, or it might be, there's areas of kind of central London in really kind of deprived areas that don't have access to green spaces, and they're actually kind of creating new green spaces from scratch.
Oh, wow.
Obviously having a great impact in terms of the environment and creating kind of more greenery, but also there's a real link there in terms of community and mental health and bringing people together, which I just think is, for me, of everything I've learned, that kind of power of connection with communities, with nature, I think is just so powerful in terms of overall health and well-being. So yeah, the work they do in terms of the physical kind of stuff around green spaces is great, but I think for me even more so is like that just power of bringing communities together. I think it's just really, really incredible work.
I love that. And I think especially over the past few years, I think the two things we've lacked the most really is community and commonality, and that we kind of lost touch a little bit in that sense.
Yeah, and connection can mean so many different things to different people, can't it? And there's a lot around kind of social media and the impact of that on people. In some ways it helps connect people, in other ways it's really kind of has negatives kind of stuff, but actually that piece in terms of bringing people together within their local area can be really, really important for people. Certainly, again, I see that with my mum and her experiences. She's had lots of medication, lots of different types of mental health intervention, but the things that keep her well are, you know, eating well, moving her body, being connected to her local community. Like that's, you know, I'm not saying she doesn't need medication, she absolutely does, but that's the things that keep her well.
And that's the things that's within anyone's remit, really, isn't it? That you give yourself the best chance of being well in that sense. So yeah, absolutely. So links to both of those organizations are going to be in the bio, everyone, so please do check them out and follow and do everything. If you can help, fantastic. And also do connect to Emily as well. Okay, so on a personal level, busy life, family, business, volunteering, everything else. What do you love to do to kind of unwind, to recharge your battery, whatever that looks like for you, to recover?
Listen to podcasts.
Cool.
Which is really cool to do this. I can't believe I'm going to be on a podcast, because like genuinely one of the, I have a little book and the list of kind of little lists of things that make me happy, and one of the number one things is going out for a walk on my own in nature. I love like woodland walks, that kind of thing. Put my headphones in, listening to music or listening to a podcast is one of the things that, really helps me unwind. I started my career actually as a personal trainer. We haven't had kind of chance to touch on that, but so fitness and health is very much part of me. So getting outside for a walk, a run, I've got a watt bike here, anything that's kind of really moving my body. I used to be in my 20s kind of quite into it in a serious way. Did some great challenges, climbed Kilimanjaro a good few years ago now, and done a few big treks and different things. But just anything that's kind of really moving my body helps me to unwind. And obviously that's balanced with kind of rest and relaxation, but actually for me, the things that help me unwind and de-stress are more the kind of physical, physically moving. And more recently, since kind of moving to South Wales, we've got a kind of bigger garden here, so just getting out and getting a bit in the garden as well. So
nice part of the world as well.
Lovely. I love Bristol. We were in Bristol for about 10 years before we moved here, and absolutely love it and love where we live. But it was kind of just the right timing with the boys being growing up to kind of move, and we're not completely cut off, but we've got really nice countryside and a bit more space, and it's really but only 30 minutes in Bristol, which is really nice, so not far.
And they scrap the bridge tolls, so we're all
exactly. So I can't lie.
Just
that
for you.
Part of the drive as well.
So you've done this recently before. So I'm now the MC of the O2 Arena in London. 20,000 people have paid their hard-earned money to come and hear you do your thing. You're sat back in the green room sipping that Prosecco. You hear me call your name when your walk-on music kicks in. That song that motivates you, that lifts you, that gets you at peak state. Emily Evans, what would your walk-on music be and why?
Well, I said to you this earlier, Nick. It's so tricky, this, isn't it? Because like I love music, and I love a really like wide range of music. So it's really hard to think of one thing. But one thing that certainly when I'm working out or running, that one track that gets me going every time is High Hopes by Panic at the Disco. I love it every time. It gets me going.
Since you put that on the playlist from Find Your Voice, I haven't stopped playing that. It's a great track. Really cool. Awesome. Emily Evans, big round of applause.
Thank you.
What an amazing guest. Thank you so much for giving up your very busy time to be with us.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's been lush to hear more about your story and things I didn't even know about you. It's been lush to talk about the big man Pete Tuck as well. Just a real kind of feel-good episode. I hope everybody else has kind of allowed us to do this. I hope everybody else has enjoyed it as well. Not just two people rambling. I'm sure that's not the case. So please stay tuned and hit like, subscribe, and all that jazz to be with us next Monday. I have another amazing guest to bring you. So please stay tuned. So in the meantime, stay well, be happy, take care. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Bye.